The Psalms are well known and beloved by many people, and certain Psalms have a resonance in our souls because we have heard them often and perhaps even memorized parts of them. And yet, familiar Psalms can become wondrously strange to us when we study them anew and come out the other side with a deeper appreciation and love. Psalm 23, a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Apart from John 3:16, Psalm 23 is perhaps the most well-known passage in the entire Bible, and for good reason. Charles Spurgeon called it the Pearl of Psalms. It's often used in funerals because it is a deeply comforting and calming psalm of confidence. Every familiar phrase has depth, beauty, and strength. David begins, "The Lord is my shepherd." The metaphor of God as a shepherd for the people of Israel is a common one in the Psalms and more broadly in the Scriptures. But what is unique in this psalm is that David sees God not just as our shepherd communally, but my shepherd personally. In fact, the personal pronoun me or my appears 17 times in 6 verses. The transcendent, awe-inspiring, covenant-keeping Lord cares for the flock as a whole by caring for each individual sheep. And he knows exactly what we need. I shall not want is the traditional style of saying, I shall not lack what I need. And it mirrors God's promise to his people in Deuteronomy 2:7. You have lacked nothing. This shepherd is attentive to know not only the needs of his sheep, but also how to meet those needs. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. All of those phrases convey the shepherd's active role in providing, guiding to safe places, soothing the sheep to rest, so that their inward stillness can match the still waters of peace, renewing their vitality so that they are refreshed. Restores can also have the sense of retrieving or reviving, as a shepherd will at times need to save a stray lamb or help them when they stumble and fall. This is what God does for us with our physical needs, our emotional needs, and our spiritual needs. When we are hungry and thirsty in our bodies, when we need rest for our anxious minds, when our souls long for restoration, the Lord is my shepherd, and he is your shepherd. We have everything we need in him. The shepherd is active in leading the sheep, as verse 3 continues. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. These right paths are both ethical and directional. God shows us how we ought to live, and he guides our steps in the direction that we should walk. It's all for his name, because God is glorified and honored when his people reflect his ways. What is in God's best interest is in our best interest. You may have already noticed that there are a lot of dual meanings throughout the psalm. God's shepherding care is both tangible and physical, as well as inward and spiritual. God shows us the right paths that are destined for us according to his sovereignty. And he shows us the right ethical paths, the ways of justice and love in obedience to his commands. But sometimes the right paths are not the green pastures, but the dark ravines. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It is notoriously difficult to translate this section from the Hebrew, but this place has the sense of deepest shadow, where all is not still and calm, but unclear and murky, where bandits or animals may be hiding, and where death, as the darkest place we can ever go, is a constant threat. And yet, the Good Shepherd has chosen to lead us through this shadow and bring us to the other side, and his presence gives us courage to overcome our fears. A typical ancient shepherd would have both a rod for defending the flock against predators and a staff to support and guide the sheep along the road. In the same way, God is our companion and guide through the deepest difficulties in our lives. And even when it feels like we are lost or attacked or fearing for our lives, God is with us. He is not surprised when the path takes us into the valley, because no matter where he leads us, we are never alone. Even death is a path that we all must take, and God alone is the shepherd who can lead us through it. The scene shifts suddenly in verse 5, where we are not sheep, but guests at a banquet. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. God is a host, and what an abundantly hospitable host he is. He creates a safe place that is protected even when enemies surround. He anoints with oil, not in the ceremonial sense like Psalm 2, but with sweet-smelling, fragrant perfume. He doesn't just fill a cup with wine, but fills it over the brim. One scholar translates, "My cup overflowing." The expression is one of delighted surprise at the pleasures of dining at God's table. Right out of the valley of shadow, we are warmly welcomed into a festive celebration that our enemies are powerless to stop. Psalm 23 is very well suited for funerals, but it is also a psalm that celebrates life, eating and drinking, and finding peace in the midst of our suffering. David ends where he began, in a place of peace and trust. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. A few things to note about this verse. First, surely has the sense of exclusivity, like only. Second, the word translated mercy is chesed, the covenantal word for God's loyal love. And finally, follow actually means to pursue, to chase after. So putting that all together, we might say, only goodness and love pursue me. That is a powerful statement of God's benevolence, his active care for us. Yes, I have enemies, and yes, I have troubles, but God's goodness runs after me. He won't let me escape from his love. I heard a pastor once use the image of goodness and love being the names of God's sheep-herding dogs. We are chased by grace. What's more, to be God's guest is to be invited into more than just one meal, but to live with him, to dwell in the refuge that he offers, not just for a day, but forevermore. This is the imagery of the promised land, a hope for a place in which our journey through the valley of the shadow of death will end in a home where we can be with God for eternity. Psalm 23 is a masterful poem on its own, but its depth and richness come forth even more when we recognize some connections to other parts of the Bible. The surrounding Psalms of 20 to 24 introduce us to different aspects of kingship, and Psalm 23 could be read as a meditation from King David on the Lord as his shepherd king and the shepherd king of God's people. There are also some key words like lead, guide, pastures, and still waters that come from the Torah, especially the Exodus story. David's shepherd leads him through the wilderness to a place of rest, just like the Lord led Israel out of Egypt and into the land of promise. There is a Jewish saying that all Jews should celebrate the Passover as if the Lord took each Jew by the hand and led him or her out of Egypt. That is very much the sense of this psalm. Psalm 23 is a beautiful work of art, well worth its reputation. Derek Kidner wrote, quote, "Depth and strength underlie the simplicity of this psalm. Its peace is not escape. Its contentment is not complacency. There is readiness to face deep darkness and imminent attack. And the climax reveals a love which homes toward no material goal but to the Lord himself," unquote. Indeed, the Lord Jesus on numerous occasions used the metaphor of a shepherd to describe his mission. He is the good shepherd who cares for the sheep. Jesus leads his people in paths of righteousness, offering them eternal life and living water and a home in the house of God. He said that he was everything we ever needed. In him we shall not want. He restores the lost. He protects the weak. He brings a feast to the lowly. But when the good shepherd walked in the valley of the shadow of death, the enemies pursued him and ended his life. On the cross, Jesus' blood overflowed for the sake of his name and for our salvation. But now we do not need to fear any evil, because the shepherd rose from the dead, never to die again, and because of his victory over sin and death, we may find rest for our souls. Trust in him. Depend on him. His goodness and mercy shall pursue us no matter what. And when he returns to bring us home, we will dwell with him forever. Neither life nor death, nor things present nor things to come, nor anything else can separate us from the love of our shepherd and host. Beyond funerals or special occasions, what would it look like to weave Psalm 23 into your daily life of prayer? Here are some ideas to get you started. When you are calm, at peace, resting in the shepherd's care. When you are agitated, upset, restless, searching for safety. When you walk in nature and the stillness of your surroundings, green fields, quiet waters, brings you inner peace. When you need restoration, renewal, revival in your soul. When you don't know what to do and are looking for the right path to take. When you want God to work in your life, not simply for your benefit, but for the sake of his great name. When the Lord leads you into the dark valley, a season of trials and suffering. When you are filled with fear, but you take courage from the presence of God with you. When you are comforted by the shepherd's strong protection and loving discipline. When you feel like a guest at the feast of God's generous grace. When you host friends and neighbors and even your enemies as an act of hospitality. When you spill something and it reminds you of God overflowing your cup with good things. When it seems like no matter what, God's love pursues and runs after you. When you abide in the goodness and love of Jesus, who is your good shepherd. Psalm 23, a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thank you for listening to the Woven Psalms. This podcast is a ministry of Rock Hill Community Church in Duluth, Minnesota. I'm Mike Solis. I'm a pastor at Rock Hill and the writer of this podcast. Ethan Gibbs is our producer, editor, and composer of the theme music. Our logo was designed by Bo Walsh. This podcast uses the English Standard Version published by Crossway. We want to give a special thanks to Poor Bishop Hooper for allowing us to use the music from their Every Psalm project. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please share it with others. You can learn more about our work at wovenpsalms.com.